Hi, welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
Hi, this is Debra Salonen, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Authors Love Readers podcast. I'm here today with Debra Salonen, and we were talking before we started recording. We're not quite sure when we first met. It's far enough back that neither one of us remembers the specifics, but we've known each other a long time, and through Romance Writers of America, through both publishing at one time with arms of Harlequin / Silhouette, and more recently, including through Novelists Inc., where we see each other most years at the conference. Do you remember any more detail than that, Debra?
You know, I honestly think it might have been at a Harlequin party, possibly New York, maybe before that. But do you remember dancing with wild abandon to that song that they always played, It's Raining Men?
Yeah, yes. Actually, the only Harlequin party that I ever remember being able to talk with anyone was at Hawaii, where we sat outside because usually they play the music so loud, and my theory was that it was always on purpose so we couldn't talk to each other like we wouldn't talk to each other other times. But those were fun parties. Yes, they were. Tell the listeners what you write.
I write contemporary romance, a lot of family type of stories. I have a few action adventure stories that I like to tell my husband, yes, this is the kind where a gun is shot. And I went off in a wild tangent and wrote one older heroine. I called her Trailer Trash, who self-proclaimed trailer trash, who decided that it was time to start living for herself.
And what are some of the titles?
Well, after I stopped writing for Harlequin, so I had 26 Superromances. The first one came out in 2000. And when I stopped writing for them, this is when I wrote my Judy Banger stories, because my contract said that, they would have first right of refusal for the next book that I wrote. And I said, well, they won't want this one. So I wrote the most off the wall thing that I could think of. And plus she was just fun and exhilarating and broke all the rules. And that was, very liberating for someone who'd been writing to more conformed series romance avenue, And so then I got a call from Jane Porter, who is starting Tule Publishing. And it was very exciting to get back into to try a small press. I love Jane, and I loved the idea of published authors setting up a publishing company with authors in mind. And so my first book for that was Montana Cowgirl. And it's a second chance at love story. And those are one of my favorites.
It is very exciting to see publishing houses, small organizations run by authors who know what authors go through and what the process is like and what the life is like. So that's terrific. Do you think writing those stories with what you call the trailer trash heroine, has it changed the stories you're writing now from what you wrote before?
No, I think she was just a unique foray but maybe in a way, I think maybe I bring a little more honesty to each of the characters. I let them say things that I might have critiqued differently in the past. Life is short. You've got to go for the gusto. And most recently, I've actually got my rights back to my quite a few of my Harlequin books. And so I've been doing some republishing, self-publishing the older titles. And I actually love this process. There are parts of it that gets kind of tiresome, the publishing side of it. But revisiting some of these old stories and bringing them back to life with a new, fresh look and adding different things, that has been quite fun.
What you just said sparks this. There's a question that a reader likes to ask about whether when we finish a story, do we think about the characters? Do we miss them? And I'm wondering if as you revisit these previously published books and you bring them out yourself, is that sparking memories of those characters? Might there be any stories off of those books that didn't get written previously, but now that you're reading them and refreshing them, you're thinking, oh yeah, there's that secondary character, or oh, I could do this.
Oh, absolutely. The first book in this series, it's a 4-book series that is going to release in July. The new title is Prince Charming Undercover. It's a family of 4 sisters who were, their father named them after princesses. And that's a Romany family. And the exciting thing for me is that I had always been intrigued by the mother. The father has passed away when the stories start. And their mother shows up, and she's a continuing character, of course, in all 4 of the stories. And at the end, she says that there's a hint that maybe there's a love story, a new love story for this last chapter of her life. And I would love to write that. So, yes.
That's wonderful. Okay.
And I think that, the nice thing that, in the past that probably for some publishers that wouldn't have been an option because of the age of the characters. But, I think there's a real call for that. And I love writing older life experienced characters.
I like that, life experienced characters. Yeah, it always interested me that publishers, well, I understood it because it is a business decision.
Right.
They have to reach to the widest common denominator. We won't say lowest, we'll say the widest common denominator.
Yes.
Whereas indie authors, we can go to readers who might not have been well served by that widest common denominator. And it always sort of griped me that publishers certainly were willing to sell to readers of different ages and other variations, but they weren't necessarily prepared for us to write them.
Exactly. I agree with you.
We get to do what we want now.
It's pretty exciting. It is fun. And I did that actually with the Tule story that I mentioned, Montana Cowgirl. I had that family series was written, and I decided to do a little Christmas novella about her parents. And she had a very contentious relationship with her father, and she came back at a time in his life when he'd kind of given up, and but her mother, and she'd never really appreciated how much that her mother had or understood why she'd stuck with this kind of off-putting old man. And so I let them tell their story, the mother and the father, and how it had changed in this part of their lives. And my readers have liked that a lot. I've gotten good reviews.
I did something somewhat similar with Wyoming Wildflower. I'd written the first 4 books in the series, and then I went back and did a prequel that it astonishingly is called Wyoming Wildflowers, the beginning, because I couldn't think of another title. And it's the generation before, but so it's the parents of the hero in book 1 and the heroine in book 3.
Oh.
It's their parents, and they appear in all the other books. And it's their story, their romance, but a generation before, when they met and what happened. And I intended it to be a novella. I wrote and this was one of them. I think I wrote 5 efforts at novellas that all ended up being novel length.
We do love our words.
So I'm not, maybe I try for a short story and I'll finally get a novella. I have done a couple now, but only because other people were saying it cannot be any longer than X number of words. And then when I had that command, then I made it. But on my own, no, they kept growing. But yeah, that's really fun. Okay, we went totally into the writing stuff. Let's back up a little bit. Let the listeners get to know you as more as a person. So, and I'll start with, what's a surprising job you've had?
I did flip burgers at McDonald's in college, but that's not really that surprising. I think maybe a lot of people work fast food. But during a summer stint at the college, I actually counted flax seeds. It's a job my sister got, and this was in South Dakota State University, and it's an agricultural college, and so I had no idea what we were doing or why. And I'm a word person, not a numbers person, so this was probably excruciating and boring, but
they had individual people counting flax seeds.
It was so that they could shape and to create a kind of a plant that produced more.
Oh, okay. I had this vision of counting the flax seeds that went into, because don't people eat flax seeds?
Well, now they do, but back then, no, nobody would have thought of eating flaxseed.
I had this vision of somebody counting the flax seeds going into the little packet. So it says, 500 flax seeds. You wouldn't know.
Yeah. No, the flax seed you're eating today is probably from a plant that I helped create.
You did it. You were part of it. Yay.
I'm going to tell myself
we all have you to thank for that.
And one time I went back to South Dakota and did a book signing, and I was talking about this, or it had shown up in my press release about my flax seed counting stint. And there was a person in the audience who was like the head of the flax seed counting people at one time, not the person that I worked for or don't remember, but he explained a little bit more about why I did it. And I was like, oh, great. Of course, I've forgotten.
Let's talk about one of my questions and whether you've used this in a book, and that's about tell us all about your strong fears.
For years, I had a recurring dream that I was driving in a car, sometimes as a passenger and sometimes behind the wheel, that would be driving along on a bridge that would suddenly become over with water across it. And you could see the other side, but you didn't know if you could dare drive this or not. And, sometimes you'd go into the water and then you'd drown and wake up. But other times you could go through and be perfectly safe. I have no idea what this means. But I haven't used it yet, but I think I will.
And you haven't had the dream in a while?
No, it actually probably ended in, I don't know, mid-20s. I don't know why, but during my, youth, it was one of those ones that I'd, wake up my mother and then I'd wake up myself. It was heart pounding.
I wonder where that came from.
I know.
The wheels are turning.
I know, it's really, really interesting.
How you would use it to characterize a character.
But I do know that if you put a person in that dilemma, it could really be a powerful plot twist, or it could be something that really reveals character, what they decide. Sadly, we actually had a flood this spring here in real life, and a woman made that wrong choice and was swept away to her death. And I don't believe they found her body yet.
Oh, that's so sad. And I was thinking about how all the safety information now says, don't do that, don't do that. And yet there is a commercial with kids where boys on bikes stop and don't go across this water. And then they have a girl come and go through, and it's supposed to show that she's more independent. And I'm thinking, no, don't do that. That's not independence. That is bad choices.
Exactly.
So I do I remember whose commercial it is? No, but I remember me yelling at the TV.
Don't do it. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, as a kid, I would more the type who might have done it. But talking about being kids, our pre-author days, did you have stories that you heard or read and you thought, this doesn't end right? And so in your head, or actually, did you rewrite them?
Oh my. I'm old, right? I can't remember.
You're allowed to say no, you didn't have any, Deb.
I don't remember. Okay. I know, that the very first thing that I ever wrote with the intent, knowing full well that it would undoubtedly be snatched up and appear on the television screen, because it was a something for the TV show Flipper. And of course, I always had the better ending for the really cute older brother in mind, with someone, undoubtedly like me playing that role. So I guess, yes, I've rewritten things from day one, so to speak.
So go back even farther into your childhoods. Can you remember stories that you think, okay, these are the ones that really got me into story, that addicted me to reading and then to writing?
My first stories, I totally blame Dick and Jane for this, but no. I loved the Hardy Boys. I really didn't have time for Nancy Drew. I don't know why.
Huh?
But toward the end, when I started picking up a little bit of Nancy, I was like, okay, well, I could see these, I was always had this, inclination toward relationships, and it's odd. I am, really. It's Dick and Jane. Huh. Were they sister and brother? Because that's really creepy. But no, there were always the... No, I do. I think it was always about the people being together, things being together. My first word, according to my family, was bofagator, which was both together. Bofagator.
Oh, how weird is that? Interesting. I was told my older siblings, and they confirmed this, that my first phrase was, do it my own self. We can see themes here in our lives, Debra. So
as the youngest of 5, but as I tell people, I was an only child with 4 siblings, because I was born so much later than the youngest of the first 4 family.
Oh, how much gap?
10.5 years.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, he's a delightful man, and he, but he tormented me, of course, and many times in my childhood, and I don't blame him, because he had been the baby of the family for 10.5 years until I came along. But my oldest brother was graduating from high school when I was born.
Wow. Yeah.
So
my sister went to college when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, about that.
So that was yeah. Yep. So I too was that's why the stuff about child order, how that supposedly affects you, and go, I don't think so. So when it has to have that many, it does this, but if that, in conditions, I just thought, So I'm whatever child order becomes a skeptic.
I do like the part where they say, after a certain amount of years, then that starts over again. So I'm like a firstborn baby, the baby of the family and the firstborn.
Yeah, that seems to me like cheating.
It does. I'm not above that.
Okay, let's talk about, so you're growing up. Did you have any songs that were just really, really spoke to you and seemed really important to you?
Well, I loved music, and I can remember the first song that I bought. I went out and bought the little round black thing they call, vinyl.
Oh, the 45.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
That was This Diamond Ring. Can you picture it? This diamond ring doesn't.
Oh.
That song. Yeah. That. Again, with the romance, right?
Yeah, you are persistent, huh?
But my
consistent.
But my parents always had music, and my mother loved music, and so I also loved the music of the 40s and the 50s, and Elvis, and but when the Beatles came, I remember my father saying, "Oh man, well that's not music." Look at those long-haired guys. That's not music. That's just shouting. As we grew up, and of course there are certain songs that are very, very significant and important in your life. When my husband and I got married, we were high school sweethearts, actually. And we got married when I graduated from college. He was 6 months or a semester behind me. We had to petition the Lutheran Church to allow us to use secular music. And I was adamant that if we were going to have this done, we're in the church, we were going to have John Denver's Annie song. And so we had to go, talk to the pastor and get it approved. And there was a numerous, wait time and debate, but we got it. It was lovely. It was lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. He did some wonderful songs, and here his voice is so distinctive and clear. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, and it was important to us because we'd also lived in Colorado together. Took a break from college for a semester, almost a year, and so we had the whole Rocky Mountain experience that was. So this was just part of our history, and I wanted it to be involved. I wanted it to be in our wedding.
That's lovely. So let's get to something a little less lovely.
Okay.
Writers have bad habit words. I'm afraid I'm going to run into one during one of these interviews who doesn't have a bad habit word. It will be not pretty, but I'm counting on you to have bad habit words that you then take out of the manuscripts. Share with us.
Before I was published, I had worked with a writers group or a critique group, and one of the people involved in it was a freelance editor. So I gave her the first chapter of my new book and the book I was working on, and she sent it back. Of course, this was in printed out paper, white paper, and the words on. And when it came back, circled in red were the word "that." And it honestly looked like someone had taken a shotgun and it was bleeding. It was, I opened it up, and I happened to be in the car at that time because it'd come in the mail, and I was in the passenger seat, and I looked at this and I just started crying, and my husband's like, "What? He died." It's awful. Oh, this is terrible. So, but I still have issues with that. And, now of course you can get some help. You can pass this through when you get finished a book and have it, have them tell you how many times you've used this particular word. But I'm very conscious of this. What are yours?
Just and really probably top the the list. I tend to, and sometimes I leave out too many that's, and you have to go back and put them in for clarity and for rhythm. But yeah, justs and reallys. And then there's usually a phrase or a structure for every book. And that's the one that drives me nuts because it's harder to find. You can search and delete for just and really and that.
Exactly.
But if you get into, I have one of them I've used more than once. It was not ba 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 ba. It was ba 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 ba. And that when I realized it and then had to start searching for it, it was tough to yank those out and rework them. But yes, just and really.
Did you feel like it, the phrases, because they were repetitive, that the average reader or would have sensed this, or did it take away from the quality of the story? What were you worried about?
When I read and therefore when I write, the rhythm is really important to me. And so if you have a repetitious rhythm, which you do with a structure like that, it will trigger for me. I've read that before. And I have found in books where things are repeated within the book. As a reader, I've found that. And maybe that comes from me because I was an editor for so long. So yeah, it would, I don't know how many readers other than really cranky readers like me would notice it, but cranky readers like me would notice it. So yeah, I try to take it out, try to change it. And, if there's one or two in a book, and the other thing that would really bother me is if different point of view characters used it. Because if it's a structure, like I just had a book that came out where one of the characters would repeat part of a phrase, that was his way of communicating. If a different character did it and they were not, mocking him or copying him, then it really doesn't sound right.
I get it.
Because it's that character's. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yep. We got into the technical weeds there. All right. That's okay.
But I'm always intrigued by another author's process, so had to ask.
Well, let's skip to that. Well, we may come back to some of these getting to know you questions later. But what's your favorite part of the process?
I'm a beginner. I love the new sense of possibility, and I'm always sure that this one's going to write itself, and it's and so I'm intrigued. I don't really know the characters completely yet, and so that finding out process is just really part of the fun. I like doing, if that's where I'm going to be doing some research, and I've had to teach myself not to get bogged down in that. But it's still that open beginning, and then the ending we talk about so much.
You just gave me about 7 follow-up questions. Let's start with I want to start with the research, but I won't. I'll be more logical and say, let's start with, so how do you get to starting? How do you come up with an idea? That's a question from one of our readers who wants to know where our ideas come from. Do you have a certain way that you tend to get ideas?
I wish I understood that completely. It would make life so much easier. But no, there are always an abundance of ideas that, kind of go through my head at different times, especially if I'm like getting ready to start a new series or a proposal for a new series. And, but something really has to grab me. I've also had the experience of like putting my head on the pillow, closing my eyes, and then having something pop into my head. And like one was a voice that said, George knew what he was about to do was wrong. And I was like, George who? Oh, crumb. This is a book, isn't it? And so I had by then learned that you always write it down. And so I actually got out of bed and walked up to my office and sat down and said, okay, let's go. Let's party. And so then I had this character who turned out to be a dog. So yeah,
cool.
I love animals and, working with animals in my stories.
Dogs tend to show up in mine too. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to, so you have this idea, you've started it, and then you said the research. So do you do the research before you're really starting to write, during, both?
During.
During. Okay.
During. So I had a story that I did for Tule, and it involved a woman who was raising alpacas. And I just assumed certain things about the process of raising alpacas. And so I, wrote that. And then as I had an opportunity, there's a local alpaca grower here, and I contacted them and went over and spent the better part of a day with them. And afterwards I came back, way too much information, of course, but I realized that some of my ideas, my premise was wrong. So I just had to rewrite that. Had I started that a little bit sooner, I would have saved myself some rewriting, but it didn't matter. I found a way to make it all work really nicely.
As you well know, there's a phrase called "write around it," and you can usually find ways to finesse what you find in the research and
absolutely
how you had something set up and then oops, no, can't do that. Okay, but there's a way to come around it in another way. This should be video for my hand gestures, because I'm weaving things in and out here. Okay, so what's your least favorite part of the process?
Probably the ending, in that I love it when it's all done, but I get to about the 3/4 point, and then my feet start dragging because it's getting closer. I'm doing the hand gestures here. It's getting closer to the end, and so I just barrel through the first 3/4, and then the last part takes me longer because I have to wrap up all this stuff and say goodbye.
That's so interesting, because a lot of people really love the ending because they're ready to be done. And do you write in sequence? You start at the beginning and
for the most part, yes. I've had a few books that things will pop up and I'll write it, but I'll think it's in sequence, and then I realize that there's a gap that needs to be filled here, otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I do.
Do you celebrate starting or ending a book?
I did more in the beginning because that felt like a huge accomplishment, and now not as much. I usually just have to get ready to move on to the next book. I clean my office. I do that. Might take a couple of days. I get my hair cut, things like that.
Well, yes, all the catch up, I do that too. In fact, usually when I finish a book, there's this spate where I am combing my dog and cutting her toenails. And at the end of a book, I tend to like, oh yeah, there's a dog here. And she gets a little antsy in the last couple days. And then as soon as I finish the book, I turn around and I'm, grooming her and doing this. And you can just see the expression on her face of, can't you go back and work on another book? Leave me alone. No more of this nail trimming. I've had it. So when you're writing a book, is it, I have a feeling, is it a joyous experience for you, or is it difficult?
It's consuming. I get into it, and my children have finally realized that if they're looking at me and I have a blank look on my face, I'm not answering their questions, that I'm not really there. I'm still in book, as we call it. I enjoy it. So I feel it's a good thing.
So when you finish a book, then, is that sort of a parting, and you feel, well, you said you miss the characters, but then what's the period like before you start the next one?
There's a little bit of a physical side to it that I like, when I set up a new book, I start, with sort of a fresh palette. I do some start looking for images that I'll pin to Pinterest, and so mostly I keep that private until then. I'll start doing some character, some research, and a little bit of stuff that I might have in mind for what I think that setting and story. And then I have this. Actually, I have a physical this lined paper that I use for to keep track of my characters by their age and the dates of their lives, that I think is important. Because somebody, when you're born and you think you have to know where you're at in their life when we're asking talking about things that are going on, and so this is stuff I set up and sort of start, but I may or may not actually use any of that stuff. It's just my my brain getting ready, gathering, sort of, I'd say.
And does that tend to be about the same amount of time for each book, or does it vary from book to book?
It varies from book to book. If I'm doing a bigger project and there's going to be family members, of course I have to have, the ages and the timeline set up for them. So, yep, it just depends on the book. Sometimes then there'll be spin-offs and I have to go back and make changes, or I did something in the first book that I really wished I hadn't done because of how it affects the second or third book. Like, I made one of my brothers in the Montana series a real jerk in book number 1, and then had to redeem him in book number 2 or 3. And that was challenging. So my readers remembered that he was a real jerk. Mm-hmm. But he did get his comeuppance. He's the one who fell on his butt in alpaca poop. So it worked.
I bet that was satisfying for the for not only the spectators, but the author.
Yes, it was. It was quite fun. And I really had to do it to him. He really did deserve it.
I had, early on, I had a character who I thought was pretty much a jerk. And he showed up in book 1 as a secondary character. And then he was stronger in book 2. And by book 2, I'm thinking, yeah, but, maybe he'll come. He wasn't the hero that heroine had always thought. She was in love with him, and it's a reunion. But then it turns out it's not a reunion with him. It's the guy she should have been with. But then I wanted to give him a story. So yeah, I put him through a lot of stuff. That's Grady in the wedding series.
Is that the free book I just downloaded today?
Yes, but by the time the podcast comes out, it won't be free anymore. Yeah, okay. It is the wedding series.
Cool. I'm looking forward to starting it.
Well, thank you. It was interesting that I think even in those early books, had started to have the seeds for his change, but you don't always realize it until you go back and read and see what little things were dropped in there. So if you didn't write, I'm going to jump here, what would you do?
That question I read, when you sent me those questions, really made me think, what would I do? And so my husband's a general contractor, and I've done a lot of things how I've done the business side of his job for his business for many years. And, but I'm also always, showing up and hands-on and helping here or doing this. And, I think, given that whole home makeover kind of show that's on,
Mm-hmm.
that I would enjoy flipping houses.
Oh, that would be fun. I don't know that I would be good at it, though, because I would want to make them very specific to my taste, and I'd probably spend too much. Could you hold yourself back from that?
I didn't say we'd get rich on it. I just...
That's true. You said you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, that's all you asked.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so you would not go back to newspapers, because I happen to know you were with newspapers. No,
I don't see that at all. Wouldn't go there.
But did you feel that that working for newspapers helped you to your writing career? Helped you in your writing career? Okay. Yeah, me too. Me too.
I was blessed. I had a wonderful editor at my newspaper who loved everything that I wrote, but helped me make it better. And at the desk next to mine, in the news section, I was in the women's section. That honestly, that's pretty much what they referred to it, even though they called it the living section. And in the news side, there was a hardcore, hard-nosed, old-time editor who was loud and mean to his underlings. So I wouldn't have been able to learn in that environment, but my editor was fabulous.
I started in sports, which was always referred to as the toy department. So I know. Yeah, I know how that goes. Have you had great experience with a newspaper head editor? Have you had good stories with readers or good encounters with readers?
I have. Some are more interesting than others. And I had one reader take me to task for using a town that wasn't real, that didn't show up on any atlas. And but the interesting part about this, because when I first read that, it came in a letter. I was like, well, of course I didn't. What? But then I read a little bit more, and the writer was an older gentleman, I could tell, who was taking care of his wife, who could no longer read, but who loved romance stories. But I don't think he loved romance stories, so he'd get put off by, so he went to look up the town of Gold Creek, and he couldn't find it. And he actually wrote me quite perturbed about that. But I wrote him a lovely letter, sent a pretty card, and sent it back thanking his wife for him for helping her and doing what he did, and for her for loving romance. And that the reason I chose to do an imaginary town name is because I didn't want to get arrested, because I had a very bad chief of police in my fictitious town. So I was self-preservation. I think he might have appreciated that.
Yeah. I had a reader, a murder mystery series set in Wyoming, and I appropriated part of one county and made it another county, and I got an email from a reader who said, I know Wyoming, and I've been trying to figure out your geography, and what are you doing? There's no such place. And I wrote back and said the same, that I said, for one thing, I already feel bad that I picked the least populous state in the country, and I'm depopulating it quickly. And I didn't want to do that to any of the existing counties. And I also didn't want to have, a real county's sheriff's department people thinking I was using them or using any real people. So yes. And I think that's the better part of valor for authors, using made up towns or big enough cities that you can kind of get away with fudging things. It can get dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to jump back and say, do you have any sayings? Because you talked about your dad in particular. Do you have any sayings that he used to say that now you hear coming out of your mouth?
Really more my mother.
Oh,
My
interesting.
father would, he used the Lord's name in vain quite often, and he had a quick temper. He's a lovely man, but no, we won't go there.
Okay, Deb, we've been wandering around in the weeds here, talking about all sorts of things, and I want to make sure we don't miss some of the questions from readers. We've hit a few, but specifically, there's one reader who asks, and I swear I did not write this question. This really came from a reader. How much does it bother you to find editing errors after your book goes live or is printed?
When my first book came out, I cried. There was only one small mistake, but I was like, how could that happen? Because this was with Harlequin, and the editorial team at the time was absolutely, amazing. And it wasn't a big deal. I mean, nobody ever wrote and complained about it or anything, but we also didn't have the internet then. But I realized that, at some point you have to let it go, and it's just out of your hands. However, now with the advent of self-publishing, it's quite wonderful. I appreciate it when, if a reader points out to me that, some mistake that I've made, because it still goes through the various channels of reader reviews and editors, but it's so easy not to see it. Some things I only see in print, and since these are first released in digitally, it's easy to miss. And I appreciate it if someone will point that out to me. I'll fix it.
Absolutely, yes, and it spares all those future readers. So I agree. Now, another reader though asks about how you feel if the cover image doesn't match the character description. And this reader acknowledges that it's a pet peeve of the readers. How does it feel for you as the author?
It was a pet peeve of mine also. And, the time and effort that went into creating a artifact sheet that you would then turn in and it would be, pretty much ignored was, really frustrating. And I understand where she's coming from because I felt the same thing. But what's interesting is that I also came to realize that was probably taken, that was marketing's department, they were less connected to the books. And so now working with a small press with Tule has been fabulous. They, you get lots of opportunities to give input and ideas, and they actually listen to them. And they've taken some risks and done some fun stuff too with them with, original art. And so I've been really happy with that. And then I work with an amazing cover artist for my indie stuff. And she is just, she can kind of hear what I'm saying if I don't really describe it perfectly. And so that's fun. I like that part of it a lot.
That's terrific. And to know, because I do my indie, and so I work directly with a cover designer, but it's great to hear that you can have that sort of relationship with a publisher too. That's wonderful. How do you, because you do some indie publishing also, you're what we call in the biz hybrid, where you work both with a publisher and do indie stuff. How do you go about doing your covers for your indie work?
The cover artist that I use has some basic questions that she asks, but then we also email and talk about. So for my new series that's starting in July, I had this great idea that I would, because these are all nice, keywords, gypsy princess brides in Vegas. I'm like, yes, that's what I'm going to use for my flash. And then I actually got back, into the book, and I realized that there's only one of the books that ends in a wedding, and the first book ends in the last book. So they don't get married until the last book. So I went, but by then she had created some really charming covers, and 3 of them that I couldn't decide on. So I put it up for a poll on my website, and fortunately, the one that I like best also was the one that was picked. But by then I had completely changed to a different theme, and it's now betting on love. And I have, and then my title, it had stayed the same, but it's still Prince Charming Undercover. But she had to come up with something completely different, and the cover is adorable and charming, and I love it. So I'm even happier with this one than I would have been with the bride's covers.
So you put it up for a poll, and then you're not using that cover at all. Okay.
Yeah. Then I had to send. But I put it up, and I offered a prize for a winner. So I had to pick, and share this with my readers again. And I said, and then, as sometimes happens in the creative process, things changed. This is the new shape, and this is the new cover. And I've gotten a couple of readers who just thought that was amusing. So it's good.
Oh, good. Because that's one of the reasons I've been reluctant to do polls, because, first, if the one I like didn't win, if there's one that I like, I'm not doing polls. I'm just picking. So that's it. So I guess that, but if they picked one I didn't like, I don't think I would, I don't think I could go with that.
It's pretty interesting because one of my best friends, she gets my newsletter, and she picked the cover I didn't like. That was my least favorite. Isn't it funny?
It is funny. Yeah. The reactions that we have, and they can be strong. So,
yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I've been reluctant to do polls, because you put them up and then you go, oops, I'm picking C, and people have become attached to A or B, and then they'll always look at C as thumbs down.
I think that you're actually giving people more credit for remembering things than they deserve, because a lot of them are like me. I see it once, I may or may not remember it. But the other thing is, now, don't tell anybody, but
okay,
the poll numbers, you have control over that. You're the only one who sees them.
I never thought of that. Shh. Okay. Oh, well, now I really can't run polls, because they'll all know that I'm.
They'll think you fixed the race.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. So we have another reader who wants to know your favorite place to write and why is it? And I think it's so nice that this reader asks that does it have an inspirational view? And then I'll tack on there, because to me these are connected. Do you have a routine that you follow too? So do you have a place, and do you have a routine?
I do have a place. And what's interesting to me is that I put off writing for many years because I didn't have a place. I was convinced that I needed to have like my garret or my ivory tower, my secluded place that I could go to and, really get into my writing. And then I got married and had children and had even fewer places that would work. We were lucky to be able to go to the bathroom alone. And so when I finally got to that place where I actually had a place and space, then I had no excuse. So it was created, my writing pattern as we know it. And that's changed many times over the years. And as we moved, and I've always had a dedicated space. And my current space is my very favorite. I have, my mother had, when she and my husband designed her house, she wanted a greenhouse, and so this is a room that's, has all windows and skylights, and at one time it had a sliding glass door, but now it doesn't. It's just more windows. And it's so it has the best view on the property, and it's a view of our creek and a little play set for my grandchildren. And although our creek was severely impacted by the flooding this spring, it's now changed, and it's coming back, and there's green again, and so it's a new living entity. And but during the summer months, I'm able to work in a front yard, which has a bamboo courtyard, and it's a leafy green with yellow little bits in it. It has birds in the breeze and shade, and it's and I can share that space with my dogs and cat and gnats and stuff like that. No.
That's lovely.
The only thing is that when the mayflies land on your screen and you think it's an exclamation point or some kind of punctuation, it's not. Kind of annoying.
And what happens when it rains?
Yeah, we don't get rain. It won't rain again until maybe one day in August, and with the summer monsoons will come up from the south. But this doesn't happen for a long, long time, sadly. And but I like to get there in the mornings and early and fresh, and then break about midday and do things that need to be done around the house and whatnot. I might even take a break and, give my brain a rest and my eyes a rest, and eat my lunch watching some PBS Masterpiece Theater or something that I would have streamed or have recorded. And then I usually get back into it in the afternoon for a while in my office, where there's a fan and creature comforts, air conditioning, because it gets really hot here too.
Yeah, creature comforts are lovely, aren't they?
Yes, and then I put it away, and I don't, when my husband's around, I try not to be on the computer at all, because time is passing, and I'd rather spend that time with him.
I was thinking about you talking about the bamboo, and the lack of rain may explain this, because when I lived in Virginia and there was some bamboo in the yard, I worked like crazy to eradicate that stuff because it would take over the world. It was so invasive. But it rained there significantly, and different kind of climate.
Yes, anything that we want to keep alive that isn't native has to have a water source. And so we can control how much water the bamboo gets. And it still likes to move and, crowd in. But every spring I cut it back a little bit. And it's just very cooling, quieting, comforting. But I've mentioned this on Facebook, or I should put up a picture, and I had a lot of people who have lived in your climate and or in the South, and they were mortified that I would ever introduce this on purpose to my property.
And I will say, as somebody who lived in North Carolina for a while, don't ever plant kudzu.
Oh, I've heard bad things about that.
Oh, they thought it was going to be a great thing, and oh well. What is the, I cannot possibly do it in the dialect, but the Robert Burns about all the plans of mice and men have often gone aglee.
Yes.
My dad could do it in the right dialect, even though he's very Irish, but he could still do the Scottish.
Robbie Burns, good for him.
Oh, you're way better than, see, you can roll your R's. I can't. It was always a real hold up in Spanish. I couldn't roll my R's. So here's a question from a reader that I think is really fascinating and thought-provoking. If you could write a book with any author alive or dead, who would you want to work with and why?
I gave this question some thought, and I seriously thought about marking it as not one I'd want to answer. But then I changed my mind, and because it is a good question, and I've over the years there have been different authors I would have picked if you'd asked me at that time, and maybe it's just because I don't remember different books and different authors. But I'm reading a book right now that was published posthumously. And it's from Michael Crichton, and I'd read a number of his books. And what I really liked about his story is the pacing always intrigued me, and I admire his use of science. And so I think that would have been fun to work with somebody as brilliant as he was. And I would have, liked to have, if I could have added anything, it would have been a bit more fleshing out of character and bringing in some of their backstories a little bit more. So I knew his characters just a little bit more. I will say the book I'm reading now is called Dragon Teeth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't know any of the details around the how they found this or why it was released. It's interesting, but it hasn't grabbed me the way his earlier books, or which might have been his later books. Maybe this was one he wrote, early on. I'm not sure.
Early, yeah.
I'm just not as intrigued by the book, but my husband and my friends have both read it and they liked it a lot. So I'm sticking with it.
I think it's really interesting what you talked about with the characters. And when I first started and I sent writing off, I did everything wrong at the very beginning, but I got a letter back from somebody, it's from an editor, and it started, the first sentence was along the lines of, "It's clear you know nothing about the publishing business." Which was true. I sent it to the totally wrong person, but bless her heart, she took the time, and I've subsequently lost the letter in a move, but she took the time to tell me various things, including that I had overplotted for my characters and that I needed to work on characters. And she recommended romance. And this is getting to the point where she said, if you don't have good, strong characters, you don't have a story. And I have never forgotten that, clearly. And in all the reading I do, I often think about that in almost every romance book, it certainly in every successful romance book, there are strong characters that you connect with and are interested in and generally understand at least one of them. And yet I've read successful books in other genres where they're not, where it's the doing rather than the who that compels some readers. It tends not to compel me as much. I need the characters.
I agree with you 100%. And I didn't even know that when I was writing, when I started writing either. And yet at some point in time, my editor said, because I didn't know there was such a thing as a pantster or a plotter. And I'd just get in and write the story. And then my editor said, well, yours are very character-driven stories. And I was like, a little bell went off, whoa, yeah, that's right. But, in hindsight, it'd been a lot easier. I would think maybe if you had, if I'd had more structure and knew what I was doing. But I just listened to these people.
When you're traditionally published, it was brutal for me because of the way they want the three chapters in a synopsis as a proposal to buy a project. And I just don't think that way. I don't work that way. And that was really tough for me.
It was an excruciating process for me too. And so often the end result was of the book that got written didn't just vaguely sort of resembled that, but none of the actual stuff that came later, I couldn't foresee that in my head. I didn't know that was going to happen.
And it used to drive me crazy because I'd send in a proposal and they would require revisions on the proposal. And I'm like, why? We all know the finished book is not going to resemble this at all. Why? Just, wait for the
Yes.
finished book and then ask for revisions. Why go through this extra step? But
exactly.
That is why independent Patricia is independent. So, what do you read for fun?
I actually love mysteries. I tend not to read as much romance, and when I'm writing romance. So if I'm taking a break, I would be reading romance. Like now because I'm doing my indie work with my repubs. I can read romance, but when I am starting a new book or a new series, then I usually read mysteries. I like your Wyoming mysteries.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What do you need from a mystery to make you like it?
I still need strong characters. The setting is important. I want to be taken someplace else, or setting is important. And I like it to keep me guessing.
That's great. Now, if a reader is new to you, hasn't ever tried any of your books, what's a good entry point for the readers?
And I have 2 rather long series, and I think the best place to start is probably at the beginning. So my Black Hills series, the last book in that was one that we worked with together on the Inheritance Project, and that was just so much fun, and it was a wonderful experience. So that one is Black Hills Baby. And then my Montana, if you like Montana settings, I was very fortunate to be part of the for Tule's has set books that are set in Marietta, Montana, and I love this little small town. It's kind of based on the town of Livingston, if you've ever been there or in that area. And so this is a cool setting with recurring characters, and that's Montana Cowgirl would be the first book in that series. And actually one of those, a book that was a spin-off from that, it's called Love Montana. It's part of the Love Montana trilogy, is free at the moment. Oh, wait, that might not work since this might not show, isn't going to show now. So
yeah,
sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. They can check and see if it is or not.
It's called Her Rebel to Kiss. And that was a fun story to write. I got to do some actual travel to do the research for that. I loved it. Oh,
that's fun. Have you, do you have any books that you think even your most loyal readers might not have been as aware of as you would like? I think of them as kind of orphan books or hidden gems. Hidden gems is a nicer way of saying it, but I do think of mine as orphan books.
Oh,
yeah,
that's kind of sad.
Well, but now you have a chance to bring them to light. See?
Well, I appreciate that, because there is a book that, I think when you're writing a series and you have, like in my Montana series, it's called Big Sky Mavericks. Nexus of this, the family unit had a spinoff from that with a cousin who moved back to Montana. And she's just one of my favorite characters. She was really interesting, unlike some that I'd written before, and I really enjoyed it. And her book is called Montana Miracle. And she's a minister of the small town, in a town that's, kind of depopulated. And and then the hero comes back, has moved away and hasn't been there, and moves away, and he's just coming back to close up his parents' estate. And then he's, getting the flock out of the cold country. He's moving to some, he sees himself sitting on a beach and with a cold Corona, and because he's just done. And she mistakes the fact that when he says he's done, she thinks is suicidal. And she's a minister, a pastor, and she's never met, she would never let somebody do that. And so they have that's kind of a fun little meet cute in a way, but a different version of that. And then there are just these fun, charming dogs and animals that he can't leave because he got stuck with all these animals. And so it's a great holiday story. And I'd love to have more readers find it. And I hope they'd like it as much as I did.
I'm sure they would. And that's a wonderful one for them to explore. We will go into my very favorite part, the either ors. And we'll see how you do with these. Okay?
All right. I'm getting my either or position. I'm ready.
Pickup or sports car?
Sports car.
Spring or fall?
Fall.
Heels or slippers?
Slippers.
Ice cream or cake?
Ice cream.
House decorating or gardening?
Gardening.
Paper plates or best china?
Paper plates.
Appetizer or dessert?
Appetizer.
But then ice cream or cake?
Life is short. Eat dessert first. Ice cream.
Opera or show tunes?
Show tunes.
Cruise or trekking vacation?
Trekking vacation. Absolutely.
Day or night?
Day.
Daisies or roses?
Daisies. That was my mom's name and my granddaughter's name too.
This is going to be a tough one. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Oh, okay. Hot air balloon or train trip?
Train trip.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Winter Olympics.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nail polish or bare nails?
Bare nails.
And here's the last one. Take the best first or save the best for last?
I take the best first.
Good for you. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us,
Do I
Debra.
win? Do I win? Do I win?
You are one of the very few who has gone through without
trying to mess
temporizing
with you.
and getting more. You are, so yes, you are a winner. Yay! Now I'll have to figure out what your prize is. First, I will say again, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Really enjoyed it. We hope that the listeners will come back next week and hear another author so you'll get to know more about them and hear the stories behind the stories. And in the meantime, have a great week of happy reading. That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.